Hey everybody, I'm back. Gonna be wrapping up Halloween movie month with two movies back to back today. Normally I try to stream my reviews on Thursdays, but since Thursday is gonna be Halloween and I will be going out that afternoon, I won't have time to fit in my reviews. So I'm gonna be doing it now, getting it out the way before tomorrow. So happy Halloween Eve. So this movie is called Dorian Gray. Uh, Came out in 2009, directed by Oliver Parker. Now, before I continue, please do me a huge favor and leave a like, comment, follow me in the links in the description below, such as my links to my Patreon, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube. If you want to further support the channel. So, this movie is based off uh, the iconic book, The Picture of Dorian Gray, written by Oscar Wilde, one of the most famous writers of history. And honestly, I when it comes to the story, I like it fine. Not the movie. I'm talking about the book story. I like it fine, and like I listened to it on Audible one time, but the reason I took an interest in a story like that because, in case you might not know, at least those who are into like those classic horror monsters that are also based off of books, famous novels like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that kind of thing, or The Curious Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The Portrait of Dorian Gray falls in that same vein because they're all set in that similar time period of Victorian England, and that's why I was like so eager to watch this movie to see the adaptation of this famous story. And this movie stars Ben Barnes, who plays Dorian Gray. Now, some of you might not know this because if you've seen this movie, you probably wouldn't be able to tell given how young he looks. Ben Barnes, if you watch the Punisher TV show, he plays Jigsaw. Yeah, that is Ben Barnes. So we got Colin Firth as Lord Henry Wotton, Ben Chaplin as Basil Hallward, Rachel Hurd Wood as Sybil Vane, Johnny Harris plays her brother Jim Vane, Rebecca Hall as Emily Wotton, Amelia Fox as Lady Victoria Wotton, Fiona Shaw as Agatha, Marion de Abo as Gladys, and Carol Goodall and Michael Cucklin plays Lord and Lady Radley. So, the movie opens with Dorian Gray, like a young little whippersnapper, arriving in London after his grandfather passed away and left him his estate. Now, there is a shaky relationship between this young man and the grandfather. Throughout the film, you get subtle little flashbacks of him as a child, and you get moments where you see like his bare back when he's like dressing and stuff, showing like lashes, that this guy was abused as a child by the grandfather. Who knows what happened to the parents? They might die young or something. Who knows? never was brought up. So clearly this guy probably has some level of issues. And this probably explains why he probably at some point when he was young left London, or somebody helped him get out of there so he get this kid out of this circumstance. But I guess ain't nobody was really the wiser about the abuse Dorian went through when it comes to his grandfather. So he comes back to sell these affairs and claim, what is rightfully his. He's like the sole living heir for right now. So he meets Lord Henry and Basil, who become his closest friends, especially Henry, who both of them kind of acts like his the angel and devil on his shoulders, essentially. Henry introduces Henry kind of because kudos to Colin Firth, because he plays like a cynical rich smuck so well, and it's kind of like that friend that your parents warned you about to stay away from, that will end up getting you busted by the cops and leaving you holding the bag kind of situation. That's this guy. Like the picture perfect example of a bad influence, which is going to be ironic again towards the end. But anyway, Basil is so amazed by this young man's beauty, because he's very, very handsome. He wanted to do a portrait. Through the next, few days, takes the time to paint, Dorian Gray's image. As a matter of fact, it really makes me want to once I get a girlfriend and becomes a long lasting relationship, I want to do something like that, to get a nice little self portrait like that. By the time, not nearly done yet, but when the painting is nearly finished, Henry invites both Basil and Dorian to this local brothel that he knows, where he quite often frequents, despite him being married. And you get to see, and I need to warn you guys, if you're curious about seeing this film, it's not meant for little kids or kids a certain age, just so you know, because there are moments in here that is very lewd, getting into kind of hedonistic. So be forewarned. Anyway, when they in this place, you see as through Dorian's point of view, seeing all these kind of illicit acts, which I imagine was extremely common back in Victorian England, where you got all these prostitutes with kind of bad looking teeth, but literally you can literally this big room, roughly almost twice the size of maybe a living room, and you having your alcohol or whatever, and people are serving you drinks and whatnot, and then there's rooms on the side with curtains barely closed, where you can clearly see a bunch of people having sex, and Dorian just looks over to the side and sees a prostitute looking at him as she's getting plowed. So it's wow. And kudos to this movie, they don't shy away from certain things. It's this is, especially during this period of time in London, I imagine that is just it, of course, given how stuffy a lot of them were back then, this is like their, release in a sense, from like the mundane. As a matter of fact, this movie reminds me of the Dracula TV show that I did a review of a few years back for Halloween, which has episodes similar to this in a way. Not they couldn't go too raunchy as this movie did, but they still alluded to it at least close as they can possibly get, which is a shame because it's a shame that it's like only lasted like one season, but it's like a really good show. I highly recommend. Uh, Jonathan Rhys Meyers, pretty sure that's his name, who plays Dracula. But it was on ABC, but they still managed to get through like the blood and some R-rated level stuff. But man, matter of fact, I really want to rewatch that. Try to binge watch it really quick, at least up to a point, because this is like an amazing show. I have so much fun watching that show. And he's very charismatic, which, going back to this movie, and which also reminds me of the Invisible Man 2020 film. The main antagonist should be like our protagonist. That's the whole point of these kind of movies based off of horror monsters, and classic horror monsters, not like those slashers. I actually have more respect for the classic horror monsters than I do for the slashers. There's only like a few slasher monsters that I actually enjoy, Ghostface being the main one, and I think like Jason will be a good close second. But the main point of a lot of these classic horror monsters is that they have some kind of eternal struggle, mixed in, that kind of feeds into the horror that they dish out. Some not their fault, some intentionally. Like the Wolfman is inflicted with a curse that brings out his inner beast that he can control, or you got something like Frankenstein is like a victim in his own right, where he just reanimated composite of several corpses by a scientist that wanted to create life from from unconventional means, and he just he just got no, but he's seen as a monster because he's the way he is. So you got to be able to feel for like the main villain to a degree, but also like condemned his actions. Dorian spots a young woman leaving out with another man. Henry's trying to, goad him into going over here and talking with the girl. Of course, he's, too timid to do it, so, and she leaves out the door, and he kind of ribs him a bit, saying like, well, the moment is past. Like time is short and fleeting. You only get these, these little moments, a little bit at a time. You gotta seize them when you can. But, of course, Basil often warning Dorian about spending any amount of time with Henry, but Dorian kind of probably sees this guy not only like a kinship, but probably like a father figure that he probably did not have. Well, definitely did not have, considering we don't know what happened to his father. Assume that his parents died when he was young, but all we get is the fact that he was raised by his grandfather, who has only been abusive to him until a certain point in his life. So it's like, it leaves open certain influences that on normal circumstances wouldn't have, push Dorian into certain things that he should not have been involved in, because he has a good head on his shoulders, and he probably easily had like a good bright future ahead of him. But while Basil is wrapping up the painting, um, and they get to see it, it looks great. But Henry made a remark about how, like, well, enjoy it. At least you get to capture what you look like now, because eventually you get older and the body is weaker, and like this and that and the third. You'll get sick. Eventually, your perfect body will get future scars, internal and external, things of that nature, and gets in his head and just flippantly, talk about, like, would you give anything to, stay this young and beautiful, like even your soul? And Dorian's like, yeah. And so, like, unbeknownst to them, a weird bargain was struck. Now, at first, I'm thinking to myself that Henry, like, is Henry, like, secretly the devil or something? Like, because it's never fully explained. It's probably just like a weird circumstance that happened. But I thought he was like the devil. It's like, and somehow this deal was struck. Like, but there's no demon or whatever around, so it's like this weird curse that just self-imposed. And that part I really don't care for personally, because no, Henry's not the devil. He's just a cynical ass. But it just, I kind of wish it. You don't necessarily need like some kind of demonic force, literally. Of course, literally, not literally, because obviously there's some supernatural means that this deal was somehow struck and the bargain was made. But I kind of wish there was some kind of, like, I don't know, some Romani witch or something or other, like, messing with him, and like, he kind of insulted, and she might cast some kind of spell on him or something, like something that you can feasibly understand, like, yeah, because not just flippant, like, oh yeah, I'll do it, and just all of a sudden, boom, it happens. It's like, no, there's got to be like a third party involved that we can, like, say, yeah, Dorian was acting like this towards this person and not realizing what he's done and caused this, that, and the third. That allows the trail of breadcrumbs that you can actually follow. It's like, yeah, this leads to this and this leads to this. But anyway, eventually Dorian managed to find out about the woman that he saw at the brothel, who turns out to, he finds out through posters that she's like a young actress. So he goes to a local theater to see her perform. He goes behind stage just to meet her, and the two kind of like hit it off. Then spending time together. And really connected. They had like a night of sex, but after having like a nightmare, Dorian accidentally hit his head on one of the lamps, causing like a cut on his on a small cut on his hand. So after being like really connecting with this girl, he ends up proposing to her, which seems pretty fast. Then he announced it to his socialite friends, and only seemed like maybe Basil was like really happy about it, but everybody else seems like, not too enthusiastic about it. And to this day, I never really understood like what was that, you know, um, because they seem so like not annoyed, but it's like not definitely not excited. It's like I ain't not expecting any ticket tape parade, but like damn, they act like they just came from a funeral. I thought maybe is he because he's like from like possibly like a lower class or something like that, so they kind of got their nose up in the air. Because I expect this if he came in saying that, oh, I'm hooking up with a woman from the brothel. That's, the kind of reaction I would expect. That kind of mentally, yeah, I kind of get it, but she's, like a young actress or, or at least like a theater woman. I'm not sure if they were looked down on. Well, I doubt it because they had tons of plays, but maybe she just wasn't like big or anything of notes, so they kind of like got a stuck up nose about it. I'm not sure. They never fully explained why they were just so like, maybe I missed something, but they're like so like not excited. Um. So Dorian is making plans with her to go see one of her uh, plays that's approaching. He tries to invite his friends. None of them want to go. Maybe it's because the area is in, and it's not any of those prestigious kind of theaters. It's like a local theater, so that's probably why they ain't trying to do anything. It's never fully explained. That's what my mind is going to, though. Just like a social economic type of high sedity attitude. He at first goes, earlier to hang out with Henry at this brothel, but he's trying to like make it to the theater in time, but Henry gets him to smoke some hookah and hook up with the local girls there, which caused him to miss most of the play, and he only catching like a little bit of it, which caused them to have a fight. Then he ends up just leaving. Henry tries to like, okay, let's because Henry has like little value when it comes to like the world. He's kind of like attitude does as he pleases kind of attitude, which is kind of ironic once again once we get towards the end of the story. So as one night when he's coming home with Henry and some other girls, he gets accosted by his girl's brother, Sybil's brother, Jim, who informs him that after the fight he had with his sister, because of after Dorian and Sybil had like their little fight, it turns out she was so distraught. She was it's kind of like once again, how did this escalate? Is there like a gap somewhere that I'm missing? Once again, like the whole curse thing. There's a gap that need to be inserted so that way we can line things up. She got so upset. She ends up, going to was actually a legit river in London, the River Thomas. No, not the Thomas. That's for something else. But anyway, it's a whole entire different thing. She ends up just drowning herself, and then upon autopsy, it finds out that she was also pregnant with Dorian's kid. When the authorities drag Jim away, Dorian is left in the house, teared up. He is just like distraught. But then he notices the painting that's been mounted on the his living room wall, and he knows the hand on the picture has a cut where his, where Dorian would have cut his hand that night. That's supposed to still be healing, but he looks at it and there's no scar, there's no wound, nothing at all. It's perfectly fine. Then he notices like a maggot crawling out of the painting. So now he's kind of catching wind that, all the stuff that he's been doing is being transferred to the painting, making him, in a sense, invincible, where like the painting is taking the brunt of everything that he does. So he eventually starts locking up the painting in the attic where the abuse had been typically happening when he was a kid. So even the scars, the old wounds from his back, they're completely gone altogether, as well. He's pretty much like just brand spanking new every time. So clearly distraught after what happened. He's like, grieving in a way. And so he fully dives into Henry's influence and hedonistic, lifestyle, taking it to like, as far as he can push it. And to Basil's dismay, he started to notice that Dorian's starting to even talk like Henry, which is kind of bothers him, because like, no, this is not good. You gotta really, he's trying to get him to dial it back a bit, because he knew Dorian's like this nice young lad, and now it's just he's becoming corrupted, by this other guy. Because was, like I said before, like didn't help that he didn't have a strong father figure who's supposed to have been looking out for him, and who he can learn from to prevent somebody like Henry, who has like a completely different worldview that he's kind of passing on to this young person, that is an overall net negative. But of course, the ramifications from all that net negative is not being doled out to kind of, because those kind of things, once they hit you, like getting into drugs or anything like that, once that stuff hits you, you eventually supposed to hit like kind of rock bottom, or at least it's starting to affect you to a degree where it's like, okay, you have to learn this kind of lesson. You have to, like, your body's supposed to teach you like pain and fear and all this other stuff that is supposed to, like, okay, you need to stop or you will die. It's self-preservation kind of thing. This curse kind of strips all that away. Now, it's kind of like with the whole thing with the Invisible Man situation, where if you can't be seen, or even like with like, by it started with the Invisible Man, but you take it to furthest, you go into the whole Lord of the Rings aspect of it with the one ring and turn you invisible. It's corrupting. That kind of power is corrupting. If you can't be seen and you don't have to look at your face in a mirror when doing horrific stuff where no one can see you and catch you or anything like that, that will corrupt you and you end up just pushing it. It's like, yeah, because, you catering to this dark side of yourself that you want to be held accountable for. So if you're not going to be held accountable for it, then, we all starting to think like, what's gonna stop me, kind of thing. That's why, like, we have things like laws and everything like that to keep people in check. It's like, we know who you are, we know what you look like, we got fingerprints and other evidence, and so on and so forth. So that way, you're visible. You can easily be caught. You can't just go anywhere you want to. So yeah, you will. You mind your P's and Q's. You get someone like Dorian Gray here, where it's like, okay, I can be involved with everything I want. I'm not going to learn any kind of consequences from my actions. Nobody can't do any harm to me. I can, and nothing I do to myself will have any kind of ramifications. So I can dive into all kinds of drugs and alcohol, and I won't get hurt by it. I'm curious, because I'm thinking about like Wolverine, because essentially he's kind of immortal too. He just aged slower. He got like super healing factors. It's kind of different from something like Dorian Gray, but it's in the same purview where he can drink, but he will never get liver poisoning, and it'll take a lot to have him get legit drunk, because his body just processes it better than anybody else. It's kind of similar to how like the Flash, that scene like, I'm the Flash. That's still stuck in my mind after all these years. But they have to, in order for him to get drunk, they have to create some particular vile formula that's, will probably kill anybody else, but with Flash's metabolism processing things so fast, he can down it, and for a few minutes he can actually feel the effects of getting drunk, but eventually it will pass, because the way his body works. Because normal alcohol, it just as soon as he drinks it, he feels probably a tingle, then is he's sober again, like that. So it's kind of similar to that aspect, but at the very least, Flash, Wolverine, they do eventually, given the amount, can have the effects, and they still can get hurt. They just probably heal fast from it, but there is like a still a barrier of entry still there. You rip that barrier away completely, like with Dorian Gray, then he has no kind of self-actualization. Anyway, and it goes even deeper than just drugs and alcohol. Now, he's taking it further, where he's having all these like one night stands with strange women, but it takes even like further, where this other acquaintance of him and his friends is this lady who is having this big debut of her daughter becoming like in a young a legally adult or something. I don't know, it's like 18 or 21. I don't know which. It's got to be one of the two. So there's like a debutante kind of situation, and Dorian meets her, and thanks to Henry's kind of like nudging, he takes the girl upstairs, hooks up with her, getting her even more drunk. Like I said, they kind of push certain things here, which I kind of appreciate, just showing the depravity. A person can take things without that barrier to keep, things in check, the body's checks and balances, essentially. But then the mom goes looking, and then Henry trying to like, despite Basil trying to cover for him, Henry, kind of nudges her in the direction of upstairs room, which this is like a big house, I grant you, but it's a party going on. How is he able to do this kind of thing without nobody noticing? It's kind of weird. But anyway, the mom goes up to the room, and Dorian is just, trying on clothes and whatnot. And she just assumes that, oh, like, what you do, you wild beast. Like, what are you talking about? Nobody's here. Like, and she's like, my apologies, because, she don't see her daughter there, so she thinks he's mistaken. But then he starts hitting on her, had like a quickie with her by getting her head, like, oh, like, you're still so beautiful, like, I can see where your daughter gets it from, and woo woo, bangs her. She eventually leaves the room, then seeing that the daughter is hiding underneath the bed, pulls her up and then bangs her. This dude's like, whoa. It's like, it's really intense. And of course, Basil is just like, dude, what the heck is going on with you? Like, you're pushing your luck. And on top of that, he's, been trying to get him to let him borrow the painting he made for him for this kind of exhibition that he wants to do in the next couple of days, at least for a couple of days. But Dorian keeps making excuses about like how he's like not going to let him have it, even for a little while, because he's trying to cover up what that painting looks like, because it's starting to get more and more grotesque because of the things he's delving into. The painting is paying the price. Tongue twister. So he gets more and more depraved, and then like, doing these masquerade balls and hooking up with, certain women in his inner circle kind of thing. And at one point, he even hooks up with Basil. But it was like a one night stand, and this kind of set him off, because he feels like, okay, you have no kind of heart at all when it comes to what you're doing. You just doing it because you're doing it as you think you please. But of course, Dorian's, it's like he, he's holding off on learning any kind of lesson in this. Like, he feels like he's immune. He is, and that's causing like a psychological thing on him now. But then he eventually comes clean about the painting, and he takes Basil to the attic and shows him. And Basil's telling him, like, you got to destroy this freaking painting, man. It's cursed. We need to get you help. And of course, there's like a broken mirror nearby, and Dorian picks up a shard and stabs Basil in the neck, killing him. And it's just like, okay, because he doesn't want to, the secret to get out, or he doesn't want him losing he thinks is probably a gift. So he ends up trying to cover his tracks, dismembering the body, dumping it into the that London river, River Thames, and hiding the evidence. Eventually, Basil's body, pieces found, and a funeral is had. But this around the time London doesn't feel like home to Dorian anymore. He lost a good friend. He lost the love of his life, who was pregnant with his own kids. So, and he done whatever. He probably went, with what terrible gift he has. He probably spent a good amount of time exploring all the underbellies of London, from low society to high society. He's probably done it all. He's probably like a, well known about town. So he then takes a trip, which lasted 25 years. 25 years is gone. And he tried to get Henry to come along with him, so he can have like a partner in crime essentially. But Henry says he can't because, as he probably sees it, unfortunately, his wife is pregnant with their kid, his first kid. So now he has to face his responsibilities essentially, even though he's like should be like well in his 40s by this point. So he probably should have had that mindset, but now it's like reality is hitting him. So now like he has, all the stuff that he probably enjoyed indulging, similar to Dorian. Now he has to like dial things back, be a little bit more responsible, realizing there's a cost. He has to, he has somebody he has to care for. Now, I'm pretty sure he cares for his wife or something, but he doesn't seem like he acts like it at least half the time. It's whatever. But he legit, it's like I'm going to be a father. I can't. So Dorian leaves, and for 25 years he's gone. Comes back, everybody else aged, but him. And this is where I got like a bit of an issue. Nobody's calling him out on this. Nobody's calling him out on this. They just saying like, they treat it like, oh wow, you only been gone for like 5 years and you look exactly the same. It's been 25 years. You mean to tell me that he should not be looking like he's into his 40s by this point? Are you joking? It's like he's like when he was first introduced into the in the film, he would have been like 23, 24 maybe. He should be well into like his mid 40s by this point in time. Everybody else has got gray hairs and wearing like old lady clothes and stuff like that. And there's now like through the passage of time, kudos to the movie to showing not telling, where it's like they actually got those early trains that run on coal kind of situation, or no, you're not coal, something like that, because like you actually see like a train, like a subway, one of the early ones. So there is like a legit passes of time. Even to the point where early in the movie they was riding in stagecoaches. Now they actually got the early automobiles. So it's like, wow, that is like a good use of showing like the passes of time. But nobody call him out on it. But B, Dorian didn't have any presence of mind to like put up some kind of cover story. Like, cause my first instinct, cause I've seen like many movies that have some kind of immortal, person as like one of the main cast, like a vampire or something like that. It's like, oh wow, like I'm just the son of, I'm Dorian Gray Jr., the son of Dorian Gray Sr., who fabricate some paperwork to show like a death certificate, like, oh, he passed away a long time ago, and I'm just pretty much like inherited his estate. Nothing like that. And it's like duh, like, why would you not have some kind of cover story? You just didn't give a crap. It's like there's women get burned at the stake for things like this, for like like some witchcraft kind of stuff. Why wouldn't nobody would think that around this time? But they just let it slide. Like they just act as times, oh my god, you have HIT. And it's like, call some medical people, some scientists or something like that to inspect this guy, because like that's not physically possible. And y'all don't call it out. Y'all treat it so blasé. That part was kind of weird. But then, as he's trying to reacclimate back into his old house and everything like that, old wound starts reopening, like with the brother, Jim, who's clearly has lost a bit of his mind, probably become an alcoholic and a bum after the whole ordeal with his sister. He tries to, Dorian played it off like, oh, I'm not the same guy that you're thinking of. Like, look at my face. Like, it's like, and briefly fooled him. Like, oh, hey, this can't be him because this guy's so young. But it's like, he tries to like kill this guy. He blames him for what happened to his sister. But then he quickly finds this cigarette case that was gifted to him by Henry with his name on it. So it's now like this dude's tracking him down, and as he's nearly about to kill him at the subway, he gets hit by the most quiet train I ever heard in a film before. He gets killed by a train, and he sees like like he's starting to finally at least maybe some kind of psychological level getting like his like not just deserves but just showing like there's consequences to your actions. Whether it happened to you physically is probably irrelevant, but you'll still feel something. He tries to go to a church and confess his sins, but the priest there won't believe him. Why would they? But it's like he wanted this like this curse lifted. Like I said, this could have benefited from some kind of Romani gypsy type of person to intercede and then let him know what he has to do in order to lift the curse or something like that, just to find like some kind of like solution that he probably won't ultimately agree with in order to stop the entire thing. Then while all that is going on, he's starting to, which is kind of weird, and normally I wouldn't like be all too bothered by this this thing like most people are talking about, whereas like age gap relationships, normally I'm not too bothered by it like most people are, because like, hey, they're two consenting adults, really don't give a crap. Shouldn't really be an issue. Like most people try to make it out to be, like, they don't have any like thing in common. Like, please, do we need everything to be a carbon copy of us to get along? Anyway, he starts to catch feelings with Henry's own daughter, who's in her early 20s, or at least 25ish, and she's starting to catch feelings for him while she's like aspiring young photographer and everything like that, which is kind of ironic because he started like a friendship with a guy who paints him, and now he's starting a relationship with somebody who's trying to photograph him, and it's all started with capturing his image, which I imagine would have been a trigger for him. But he's trying to keep his distance from her. But unbeknownst to him at first, that Henry's starting to notice, which, like I said, the irony thing that will circle back, here it comes. Now, knowing the kind of stuff that Dorian's into, or what he's done in his youth, and he's catching on how weird it is that he hasn't not one iota had aged, and now he's growing suspicious and everything like that. And it's like, and he's telling him to stay away from his daughter. Like, I don't want you getting involved with her, this, that, and the third. And it's like, I can't but think, dude, you turned him into this. You introduced to him all these kind of depraved little things and feeding his mind with all your, what amounts to is hogwash. And now you mad because now it wasn't happening to you, and you was having like a time in your life with this kid, and while he's like indulging in all this kind of depravity, other men's daughters, but you did not give a crap, and even interfered with a possible solid relationship he was going to have with a woman who would have been having his kid, but you did not care. You just sat back and watched the puppets dance essentially. But now it's hitting home to you, and you can't handle it. And it's like, no, you don't get to, get in your feelings about this. And like, if I was Dorian, which I would have been sympathetic, not for him, but for the daughter and everything like that. But if I was Dorian, I was like, dude, don't you blame me or look down on me when you was getting to the kind of stuff that I was back then. And on top of that stuff, you taught all this stuff to me. So like, don't you dare like try to like turn me, treat me like I'm a monster, which is ironic technically. But he doesn't say nothing because he's like, he feeling some type of way. Through some investigations, Henry looks back at like old photos of him and Dorian, everything like that, and he puts together that the painting that Basil made for him has never been seen since he painted it. And so he sneaks into Dorian's place, goes to the attic, and while Dorian figures out that where he's going, so he runs and they end up in the attic and tells him not to look, but they end up fighting. Henry puts a blade to Dorian's throat. Dorian should he's cool about it, but he should have like, dude, trust me, that won't work. But like, you can't look at this painting. And he ultimately reveals to Henry the grotesque look of this decaying picture. And mind you, the horror aspect comes from this painting that moves and like gasps for breath and stuff like that, and it's trying to reach out and stuff like that. It's like has like it gets like, wow, okay, this is kind of creepy as hell. But then oh crap, Henry's daughter Emily comes looking for them, but this gives Henry opportunity to lock, because the fight, when the lamps fell. Oh no, not a lamp. He locks Henry in the attic because there's like a legit, bars that was set up a long time ago, and he locks Dorian inside with the painting because he feels like that thing needs to be destroyed. So the lamps outside is gas filled, mind you. He rips it down, and there's a fire being set, and the attic starting to go up in flames along with the mansion eventually. Dorian accepts his fate and he says goodbyes to Emily, while he takes his cane sword to the painting and impales the thing where now the curse, that's how the curse is typically broken. Normally, well, I think I learned it from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie, which has these classic, creatures from all these different story tales over the years, assembling like the Avengers essentially. One of them being Dorian Gray, who, uh, in order to break the spell of his immortality, he has to look upon the picture, and that way it'll break the spell. And while the picture ages, it gets younger, while Dorian, rapidly ages to dust. That's how I always thought that how the curse was broken. So all the while watching this film, it's like, don't look at the fucking painting, because that's isn't how the curse is typically broken. But no, the painting actually has to, be destroyed in some kind of way in order to break the spell. So he ages and dies in a fire. And I guess, by the end of the film, Henry's left alone. The wife and daughter, don't understand. They probably wouldn't be able to believe him. So they think he just caused like the death of Dorian, which I'm shocked that they didn't try to get him brought up on charges and call the cops on him for that kind of thing. But whatever, they just choose to leave him. They don't want nothing to do with him. And you get to see that he kept like the destroyed portrait of Dorian Gray, which eyes still flashes, signifying, I don't know what, it's typical horror film thing, like, oh, is he still around? It's like Freddy Krueger winking at the camera at the end of Freddy vs. Jason. It's like, oh my God, what does that mean? Like, whatever. So yeah, that was Dorian Gray. Now, like I said, I appreciate the moments where they kind of really lean into the depravity that he indulges in, showing how further he stumbles into the darkness. And critics, back when this came out, said that, Ben Barnes was, kind of bland in his performance. I don't get that. I think he played pretty much like reserved aristocrat kind of attitude a bit. But then shows like, him just when he starts really getting involved with all this kind of depravity, he kind of like, he really like elevates the performance a little bit in my eyes, at least. So yeah, I mean, overall, I'd say it's like a above average movie. It's not like too striking of a like a game changer of a movie kind of thing, but it's a decent horror flick, if most people want to call it that. I think it counts as a horror. It literally is in the genre title of horror, dark fantasy kind of thing. So yeah, it's fair. Now, I mentioned about the plot holes. That's what it's like. There's things like missing gaps that kind of interconnect certain things that will lead to an outcome that doesn't explain. Like, why one argument leads to a girl want to drown herself, and it's like there's a missing gap there. It's like there's like a particular gap where there's the escalation portion that would, lead you to understand why she just decided to go leaping into the river. It does not make sense in your mind, where it's like, okay, you had an argument, then X, then drowning. Okay, like there's a missing gap here. The same way how I feel about like, okay, how was this deal struck? It was just like a flippant type of, discussion that they have. That, Dorian said, yeah, he would trade, anything to look this young forever, blah, blah, blah. You treat it like he literally was talking with like a demon or some kind of witch or something like that put this curse on him, because that would, kind of at least line things up. This is kind of like a flippant discussion, and boom, the curse is, struck. I kind of wish they did a little bit more with that to offer some type of explanation. After all, you are adapting a film. You can take at least a little bit of liberties. But anyway, that was Dorian Gray. And let me know in the comments below if you've seen this movie before, or if you haven't, I highly recommend it just so you can get a better understanding. But I warn you, there are some things that you got to brace yourself for when he's indulging a bit. You gotta be prepared for what you're gonna see. Uh, but yeah, this is yeah. Just let me know what you guys think, because like I said, it's like a fairly above average film. It's fine. Now I got one more movie to cover. This one's a little bit more fun. Is Broken Lizard's Club Dread. So I have to at least put like a slasher at some point. It's been a minute, so I gotta add like a slasher on at least a list this year, because I did Scream last year. So I think at least once a year I got to put a slasher on the list, because I'm not much of a slasher person, but there are a few slashers that I should talk about. So Broken Lizard's Club Dread. Stay tuned for that, and I'll see you all later. Peace.